Hello everyone, welcome to biology class. In this class, we are going to see 12th standard botany chapter 5 plant tissue culture. Plant regeneration pathway. So, the previous topic we have learnt about the plant tissue culture in which we have learned the explant can be made to regenerate the entire plant. So, how the explant can be made to regenerate the entire plant? It can be made by somatic embryogenesis or organogenesis. Let's see what is somatic embryogenesis or organogenesis. Somatic embryogenesis is nothing but formation of embryos from the callus tissue, unorganized mass of tissue, directly, and these embryos are called embryoids. So, when the embryos are arising from callus tissue, such embryos are called as embryoids. Or from in vitro cells directly from pre-embryonic cells, which will differentiate into embryoids. And applications. Somatic embryogenesis provides potential plantlets which after the hardening period can establish into the plants. And these embryos can be used for the production of the synthetic seeds. And this has been reported in many plants such as Allium sativum, Oryza sativa, Z. mace, Hordeum vulgare, etc. Next, organogenesis. So, organogenesis is nothing but the morphological changes which occur in the callus. So, the changes that occur in the callus, thereby leading to the formation of shoot and root is called organogenesis. So, from callus, differentiation process takes place. So, when it gives rise to shoot, the process is called coelogenesis, and if it gives rise to the root, it is called rhizogenesis, and which will lead to the formation of plantlets. And organogenesis can be induced in vitro by introducing the plant growth regulator in MS medium. And auxins and cytokinins are used to induce shoot and root formation. So the explant which we are taking from the plant, it can be a meristem, shoot apex, stem, leaf, root or callus. So when we are using meristem and shoot apex, it will lead to the formation of virus-free plant. And from the stem, the node part can be taken and which is used to induce multiple shoot induction and root induction, and plantlets are produced and it is hardened and transferred to the field. And how we can use this callus, that is indirect embryogenesis, the shoot induction, root induction, the plantlets can be produced and it can be hardened and then transferred to the field. And the explant through the direct embryogenesis. So the embryoids can be formed and from that the plantlets and after hardening can be transferred to the field. And this illustration shows about the embryogenesis and organogenesis. So first, organogenesis, direct organogenesis and indirect organogenesis. So in direct organogenesis, from the explant itself, the organs can be formed and after rooting, the plantlets are produced. Whereas indirect organogenesis, from the callus, the root organogenesis and shoot organogenesis takes place, leading to the formation of plantlet. Whereas in case of embryogenesis, so from the explant, direct somatic embryogenesis can be formed, or from the explant, the callus is made to arise the somatic embryo, and then through the indirect somatic embryogenesis, the plantlets can be produced. Applications of plant tissue culture. So this process has several applications. Through this process, using this process, improved hybrids can be produced. And the somatic embryoids which are produced can be encapsulated, that is, it can be surrounded by a capsule like structure, and this in turn will lead to the production of synthetic seeds or synseeds. So we will be seeing in the next upcoming slide. So when you can use certain materials to coat over the seeds, that process is called encapsulation. And by using the synthetic seeds, we can help to conserve the plant biodiversity. And when we are using the meristem and the shoot tip culture, we can produce disease resistance plants, and also stress resistant plants can also be produced, like heat resistant, herbicide tolerant, etc. And micro propagation technique can be used to obtain large number of plantlets of both crop and tree species useful in forestry. Okay, that is within a short span of time it can be produced, and through the year can be produced. And this plant tissue culture can be used for the production of secondary metabolites from cell culture, which is utilized in pharmaceutical, cosmetic, and food industry. I'll tell you about these secondary metabolites in the I have already told you about the secondary metabolites in the previous video. Next, variations. Somoclonal variation and gametoclonal variation. First is somoclonal variation, that is the somatic variation found in plants regenerated in vitro, that is outside the lab. So these variations are found in plants regenerated in vitro. In vitro means not in the field. Okay, it is created in the lab. That is the variations found in leaf, stem, root, tuber or propagule. And gametoclonal variation is nothing but the variation found in plants regenerated in vitro in their gametic origin. That is, variation is made in the gametes. The next topic is micropropagation of banana. So we can produce the plants by micropropagation at industrial level, and which will maintain high standards of homogeneity. Okay, homogeneity is nothing but genetically they will be similar. Okay, that is called as homogeneity, and this can be made in plants like pineapple, banana, strawberry and potato. The next topic is synthetic seeds. And the definition of synthetic seeds, they are produced by encapsulation of embryoids in agarose gel or calcium alginate. Okay, we can use some other inert materials also apart from these two, like we can use sodium alginate also. So these seeds are produced by embryoids obtained through in vitro culture, and they may even be derived from single cells from any part of the plant that later divide to form cell mass containing dense cytoplasm, large nucleus, starch grains, proteins, oils, etc. And to prepare the artificial seeds, different inert materials are used for coating somatic embryoids. And what are the advantages? So they have many advantages over the true seeds. That is, millions of artificial seeds can be produced at a low cost and at any time. And they provide an easy method to produce genetically engineered plants with desirable traits. And by using this, we can test the genotype of the plants. And they can potentially be stored for a long time. Okay, by using the cryopreservation method, we will see in the upcoming slide, we can store it for long time. And artificial seeds produce identical plants. And the period of dormancy of artificial seeds is greatly reduced. Dormancy means the resting period. So during which the germination of the seed will not occur. But here the dormancy can be reduced, so growth is faster with a shortened life cycle. The next topic, virus-free plants. So we know that crops can be infected by a variety of pathogens like bacteria, fungi, mycoplasma, viruses, etc. And when they are infected by pathogens, it will lead to economic loss. And when to control these pathogens, when chemicals are used, they are effective only against the fungi and bacteria, but not against viruses. So how we can produce a virus-free plants? So shoot meristem tip culture. It is the best method for producing the virus-free plant because this shoot tip is always free from viruses. So when we culture using this, okay, we can produce the virus-free plants. Next, conservation of plant genetic resources. First one, germplasm conservation. So, germplasm conservation is nothing but the conservation of living genetic resources. Okay, like it can be a pollen, seed, or tissue, and or plant material maintained for the purpose of selective plant breeding, preservation, and live condition, and use for many research works. And germplasm conservation resources is a part of collection of seed and pollen. And these seeds and pollens are stored in seed or pollen banks like this, and so as to maintain its viability and fertility. And germplasm, so this is an example for seed bank. Germplasm conservation may also involve a gene bank, so in which the DNA bank of elite breeding lines of plant resources for the maintenance of biological diversity and also for food security. The next topic, how to conserve, is cryopreservation. So it is otherwise called cryoconservation. It is a process by which protoplasts, cell, tissues, organelles, organs, enzymes, or any other biological material, they are subjected to preservation by means of cooling. Okay, this cooling is done at a very low temperature, minus 196 degree Celsius, using liquid nitrogen. Okay, so this method is called as cryopreservation. And at this extreme low temperature, any enzymatic or chemical activity of the biological material will be totally stopped. Okay, and this can lead to the production or preservation of the material in dormant status. And later, how we can bring it back to the room temperature? Okay, so we can bring it back slowly. Okay, and it can be activated for any experimental work. And protective agents like dimethyl sulfoxide, glycerol, or sucrose are added before cryopreservation. So that is, these materials, these agents are referred to as cryoprotectants. So why these cryoprotectants are used? Because when we are going to freeze the cells at a very low temperature, okay, so it has to withstand, okay, the stress. So when we use this cryoprotectants, it can protect the cells or tissues from the stress of freezing temperature. So this is a very, very important topic. Next, intellectual property rights. So it is a category of property that includes intangible creation of human intellect. So we are going to protect one's own intellectual findings, and it primarily consists of, so how we can conserve, okay, or how we can protect is by giving copyrights, patents, or trademarks. So it also includes other types of rights such as trade secrets, publicity rights, moral rights, and rights against unfair competition. In biotechnology, the transformed microorganisms and plants and technologies for production of commercial products. Okay, so whatever we are using the transformed microorganism, the products are exclusively the property of the discoverer. Whomever is discovering such a kind of organism, so they have the property. Okay, and they have the copyright or the patent. The discoverer has the full right on its property, and it should be neglected by the others without, it should not be neglected by the others without legal permission. So without any legal permission, so nobody can work on his own in his finding. And the right of the discoverer must be protected, and it does by certain laws framed by a country. So how to protect the right of the discoverer? By framing certain laws. The IPR is protected by different ways. So how it can be protected by different ways? It can be protected by means of patents or trademarks or copyrights, trade secrets, designs, geographical indication, and plant breeders' rights. What are patents? So patent is nothing but it is a special right and it is given to the discoverer or the inventor, that has been granted by the government through legislation for trading new articles. And patent is a personal property, so it can be licensed or sold by the person or organization just like any other property. And patent terms gives the inventor the rights to exclude others. Okay, so when they have got a patent for something, so they have their own rights, so no one else can copy it, or no one can use it or make it. The next topic is biosafety and bioethics. So advancements in biotechnology and their applications. How it is done, how the advances in biotechnology are taking place by means of genetic manipulation. First is biosafety. It is the prevention of large-scale loss of biological integrity, and it focuses on both the ecology and the human health. And these prevention mechanisms include conduction of regular reviews of the biosafety, that is, following certain guidelines, making certain biosafety in laboratory settings, etc. And biosafety is used to protect from harmful incidents. And many laboratories handling biohazards employ an ongoing risk management assessment and enforcement process for biosafety. And failure to follow such protocols, so they will be having certain protocol which has to be followed to avoid the risk. So if we are failing to follow such protocols, can lead to increased risk of exposure to the biohazards or pathogens. Next is bioethics. Bioethics is nothing but ethical, legal and social implications, ELSI. So it refers to the study of ethical issues which are emerging from advances in biology and medicine. And it is a moral discernment. So it is accordingly, it is judged as it relates to medical policy and practice. And bioethicists, they are concerned with the ethical questions that arise in the relationship among life science, biotechnology and medicine. And this bioethics will also include the study of values. And scope of bioethics is directly related to biotechnology, including cloning, gene therapy, etc. And the developments in biotechnology will affect the future evolution, and it may require new principles. So whenever according to the development, it may require new principles such as biotic ethics that values the life. The Ethical, Legal and Social Implication ELSI program was founded in 1990 as an integral part of Human Genome Project. And the mission of this program was to identify and address the issues raised by genomic research that would affect the individual or family and society. A percentage of this HGP, Human Genome Project, budget at the National Institute of Health and US Department of Energy was devoted to ELSI research. The next topic is Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee, GEAC. So it is an apex body. It is under the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. And this committee is for regulating manufacturing, use, import, export and storage of hazardous microbes or GMOs and cells in the country. So hazardous organisms can be manufactured, or it can be used, or whether it can be imported from other country or exported to other country. Everything is done based on this committee. And it was established as an apex body to accord approval of activities involving large scale. So whenever we are using hazardous microorganisms, it is dangerous. So this use of hazardous microorganisms is under the approval of this committee. The GEAC is also responsible for the approval of proposals relating to release of genetically engineered organisms and products into the environment and experimental field trials. The next topic and the last topic of this chapter is future of biotechnology. So it is a very good comprehensive scientific venture. So when we see from the academic or from the commercial angle, it is a very comprehensive venture, and within a short time, with the sequencing of human genome and genome of some important organism. So using this biotechnology, we could study the entire human genome. And even the future developments will be exciting, okay, obviously. And the development in biotechnology will lead to a new scientific revolution. So this will change the lives and the future of the people. Unlike industrial and computer revolution, the biotechnological revolution will also promise major changes in many aspects of modern life. So that's it with this chapter. Thank you. Meet you in the next video.